Michael and Chris here with Create Insights. We've got an exciting topic that's been coming up, and actually something a little affecting me. We're not all perfect here all the time, even though we're the kind of leaders of Create. We each have our strengths and weaknesses all the time, and so I want to ask Chris here about the aspect of kind of systems and processes when you start dealing with more than just one project. You still may be the leader, you might not have 50 employees or anything, but you have a bunch coming in, and all of a sudden it's now like, we've just shot in 2 weeks' time 8 different projects because of the way you do have some systems in place. But then from there, how is it getting distributed to editors, and what is kind of that process? So it gets back, well, let's say that even on another call you said, I may not even be there at all. The footage gets back to me. Even on that simplest terms, how's it getting back to you? Is it getting shipped? Is a guy that shot it local bringing it to you? And then how's it get distributed to your editors? I know you have one full-time guy there. So there's a lot here in this. This is a heavy topic, but I'll kind of let you just go at it for a minute.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different types of projects. I mean, the one, of course, would be the shoot that I go to and I manage and I run, myself, and then I come back and do the processing and all that. And then there's the shoots, like you'd mentioned, where, I hire a guy to go shoot a local event or a local meeting or something for me, and then that footage makes its way back to the studio. And then there's, of course, the out-of-town shooters, that do the work and then ship the content back to me. So, we'll just kind of go through sort of step by step. I mean, I know the one issue you mentioned is that your guys kind of, the second they're done shooting, they want to start processing and editing and all that stuff. And so you're trying to figure out sort of how to make that workflow work, in terms of do they just need to chill out for a day or what's the deal? So part of what I do, and I don't think it's anything new, but like yesterday we did this shoot in Nashville. I drove to Nashville to do the shoot. And basically we interviewed 2 people. And so when the first interview was done, while my assistant was sort of resetting the room so that we could do another interview in the same room but have a completely different look, I went into the little conference room on the side and I went ahead and set up the gear, set up the SD card to start transferring and actually encoding or transcoding to ProRes, to those ProRes files. So the first thing is I go in there, I take the SD card out of the camera, slap it in the laptop, and I actually carry 2 portable drives, a backup 1 and a backup 2. And then I copy the raw files out of the DSLR straight into both of those drives. And then I do a ProRes conversion on one of the drives, and as soon as that conversion's done, I immediately copy it to the second drive so that I'm kind of have this thing happening. So when the second interview was over, I went into the conference room and did the same thing. While my assistant was striking the gear, I was backing up all the footage and going ahead and hitting transcode on the second interview while we tore down and loaded up the car. So about the time we loaded up the car, when I went back up to the conference room, the transcode was finished. So basically, all of that processing was done. So what we did is we got in the car and we drove home. Well, while we're driving home, I've got this nifty little plug-in, in my Dodge Nitro. So we plugged the laptop in, and we went ahead and synchronized the audio files to the ProRes files using Pluralize.
Yep.
And so 2.5 hour drive home, guess what? By the time we get back to the studio, it's ready to edit because the stuff is done, and not every shoot is that way if it's a local shoot, but it's done. And so at that point, all I have to do, or all the editor has to do, is sit down and right there they can start working with it. Mm-hmm. Now, in a circumstance where, I mean, literally 10 minutes ago, a guy brought some footage in from a thing he shot yesterday while we were in Nashville. So I was making money even while I was making money,
So another guy, got it.
Right. And so he shot this corporate meeting for us. Well, today, he just brought me one of his hard drives that has the raw files on it. He shoots with an EX1, so there's not really any processing that goes on with the files. And, I think even right now, I'm still copying the footage over. So as soon as he came and set it on the desk, it's like there's a sense of immediacy as it relates to processing files around here. We don't like to just let them sit around, because then it's like when you finally have time to work on it, you realize, crap, man, I didn't process the files yet, so now it's going to be another 2 hours before I can even start working on it. Exactly. So it's like as soon as it hits the desk, I want to get it in the system. I want to get it ingested, transcoded, whatever it is. So that footage is copied over. He's going to come back on his way, back across town in a couple hours and get his hard drive back. So that's how I got that. Now, out of town guys, it's basically very similar to the in-town guys. The only difference is they're shipping the drive via FedEx or
Do you have
UPS.
them back before, and you might say it, but do you have them make sure that they won't send it to you till they've put it somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to believe that it's kind of an unwritten rule or an unspoken rule that you don't ship something unless there's a backup. I mean, it's funny when we used to shoot, Betacam with tapes, the producer would be like, "Oh, just ship the tapes," and I'm like, "Well, what happens to them if something happens?" He's like, "Man, that's just it is what it is. We don't have time to make backups and all that." So, I mean, fortunately, none of it, at least my experience, no one has ever had a lost tape. But so yeah, I mean, it's basically a lot of times what happens is these guys shoot on SD cards or flash cards or whatever. They dump it to an external drive, they ship it, and then they just keep the footage on the cards until I can confirm when I get it, that basically the files are good. And then immediately when I receive it, I immediately back them up, to two places.
Is that drive a drive that you keep, that you've paid for, that you've budgeted to the client? What's that issue with the drive?
Typically what happens is they ship a drive that's theirs, and then I'll just dump the footage, make sure it's backed up, and then I'll just immediately ship the drive back, next day. Yeah. I mean, not next day delivery, but the next day have it back in the mail heading their way, like ground or something. So, and it's funny because from a logistical standpoint, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how a lot of us, me included, especially earlier in my career, I was just scared to death for somebody to ship something, or I was scared to death to hire somebody to do it out of town. So I'd drive 6 hours to do a shoot and then drive another 6 hours back, and to what? To save, $800 or $900 on hiring a crew, when I spent at least that in my time just to get there and back. And I could have been working on 10 other projects at the same time, and so it's crazy.
I think we can take this and almost we can finalize this and start a part 2. Okay. And the part 2 can be that post-production part of it. So you've kind of gone through local, out of town type of different scenarios, and now and what you do to get it. So now we'll talk about in part 2 of this video what you do with that footage in the editing realm. If you have these 5 projects and they may all be due in a week and a half, or maybe your projects do have much longer deadlines. So we'll talk about that in part 2. Thank you guys for this specific one. Michael and Chris here with CreateInsights.com. Be sure to check out our website. We've got a lot of great resources, and our membership. The Create Insider is an awesome community where we get on a call every Wednesday and we just answer your questions. And then the community helps answer your questions. So it's really awesome. We truly appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you guys again. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.